Thank you, Theodore, for the introduction. I'm very honored to be here at this conference. And I will first share an overview of what I'd like to do. I'd speak about myself first, and something in relationship to trauma and the relationship to me, myself, and then to do the exercises. So first of all, I invite you to do a gesture to create a mood, to begin. And I would ask you, if you want to follow this, stand comfortably, take as much space as you need, that your arms are hanging comfortably by your sides. In eurythmy, it's a lot about feeling the experience of a will exercise and of feeling. And so the organ of feeling, the heart, is in the center. And to do Leo. Leo is done in eurythmy, that we have flaming enthusiasm with the arms spread out. And I would like to begin so that we can remind ourselves what Theo said at the beginning, that we move directly from the heart. And if your arms are hanging comfortably by your sides, that you lift them so that they are rounded. And lift them more and more, feeling them. What is here? What am I spreading? What is around my heart? Until the arms are around the height of the horizon, and let the palms move outwards. The fingers are spread. The fingers are spread into all directions. And then carefully bring your arms back down, releasing the gesture. So we try once again, so that the arms are rounded in a loving way. And then lifting them as far till the fingers are spread out in all directions. And I'm connecting with my whole surroundings, connected with my surroundings in one direction. I can feel in, and in the other direction, I can feel in. So that this is a feeling that goes from the heart, starts from the heart, and going right into the gesture of Leo. So the gesture of Leo started once again in a rounded way, the heart in a sun-filled way, spreading out into all directions through the arms. Thank you. So now if you want to sit down, you're welcome. Relax. How do you feel? How do you feel about what you've just moved? For me, 10 years ago, I studied eurythmy in The Hague. And at that time, in the city, in almost every street, there was a yoga studio at that time. And we had a beautiful eurythmy academy, but there were very few students. And I had the question, how can it be that eurythmy is only in one place in this city, and in every corner there is a yoga studio? Eurythmy is an art of movement where I can do something for myself. I'm connected to myself, and I feel better afterwards. And at that time, during my eurythmy training, I had the feeling that's what I'm learning. I can carry it with me everywhere. No one can take it away from me once I've learnt it. It doesn't matter what sort of a situation I'm in. I'm always in this position in an inward way to do eurythmy. Even if it's outwardly impossible, inwardly, with the gestures, with the movements, I can work with them, with my feelings, spread my feelings out, make myself agile, movable, and move into the gestures. For me, there was this question, how can eurythmy come into the world that for each person, that it can be something for each person, that each person can practice eurythmy and gain something from it. And when I got to know the courses of Gerhard Weber, who gives courses not just for eurythmists, but for all people, and offers eurythmy therapy in this way, that everybody can get to know eurythmy, and not just as a stage art, but that I, myself, that I can experience how does eurythmy work on me? What can I do with eurythmy for my own health and to help other people? And now I'm very happy that this year I've begun to offer a training for eurythmy therapy for all people. And we're starting to work this, to do this path, to find ourselves in feeling. And we're doing it through music. How can eurythmy help traumatized people, or for post-traumatic growth, for a healing? How can this work? How does this work? Eurythmy is something I do for myself. And I can move, I can make gestures. And these gestures and movements bear a relationship to who I am. Who am I? And that is big question. And I have been working with trauma from America with Peter Levine or Gabor Mate. Gabor Mate said about the wisdom of trauma. He said there is a wisdom that lives in trauma, and that is when we recognize that I am triggered through trauma, through my traumatic impressions, that it's not just me. And because I'm able to work through this trauma, I can become myself, become more myself. If I've had a traumatic experience, that I don't actually want to go back into this state. I want to keep a distance from this state. And as Harold explains these things, there are different points in the post-traumatic events. And the most difficult moment is when when I get stuck in a particular state. And that could be that I pull back, I want to disappear, or perhaps I go forwards and become aggressive. And last week, we heard about this in the going back and the coming forward, that in eurythmy, we have this possibility. I can go backwards or I can go forwards. So there's the orientation, not just back and front, but above and below. And perhaps I'm able to see myself from above. Or I drop down too deep into my being. And this as a brief geometrical introduction to the relation of eurythmy to trauma. Peter Levine recommends an exercise to reconnect with one's body. And I will show this, and I will also remind us what Theodore said at the beginning, that we must take care of ourselves and try and sense what helps me, what is doing good, stay within my own boundaries, and to feel what is going on within me. So if I have been through a trauma and I can't get back to my real body, to my own body, so touch is then a very helpful, to touch different parts of one's body. And that at that moment, I can say to myself, dear arm, dear forearm, you belong to me. Dear upper arm, you belong to me. Dear shoulder, you belong to me. But I really touch. And from a eurythmical point of view, we're doing a sort of a B, that I bring this part of my body to me. It belongs to me. It is my arm. It's my hand. I can do this with all parts of the body. I can touch my head. I can touch my legs. So now, to bring this more to the being of my body, try to make this movement not completely finished, but to get close to my arm. So I'm not physically touching my arm, but there's a little bit of a distance. So I'm feeling and observe. Observe what is happening. Can I feel something? Can I experience something? Is there an experience in my lower arm when one hand comes towards the arm, the upper arm? And what I'm not saying, dear upper arm, but I say, dear upper arm, dear shoulder, clavicle, collarbone, upper arm, one could say this is almost like a V. So I'm not touching myself, I'm just moving towards myself. It's more like a V, as in evoe, evoe. And then the S. S, I ask myself the question, how would you like S to be? I ask the question to my forearm, how would you like it? What sort of an S would you like? How would you like me to touch you? And you can try to stroke above the arm, to stroke over the arm, not touching it, just stroking, staying above the arm. How does the forearm want this? From the top, from the side, from the back, from below? What possibilities are there? And you can do this with each body part. My dear upper arm, how would you like to be touched? So we'll go through all three sounds. The B, when we're touching our arm, dear upper arm, you belong to me. Dear forearm, you are my forearm. Dear hand, dear fingers, dear forearm. And then you don't complete the B, but you go to the V, as in evoe, the V, and you just as though you're just about to touch, but not touching. In a friendly way. Friendlily moving towards the part. Bringing the V again and again to the arm, to the collarbone, the V. Or if you ask the question, how would you like to be touched? How would you like to be touched? How do your arms feel? Are they different now to how they were beforehand? And your reaction from inside? And in the best case, the arm or the body part says, yes, can you do it again? It's so lovely. Touch me again. And so those are three consonants, B, V, and S, that are very important in how I touch myself. And now I invite you once again to stand up. Now we'll be working with the feet. Last week we heard from Judith when we did the starfish exercise, this lovely exercise where we were contracting and then expanding to let go of tensions, where we had the upper man and the lower man that might be in a state of tension, to harmonize these two. So I'd like to do something a bit similar, and it's also about tension in my body. And Judith spoke about attunement. How am I standing? Where is there any tension? What happens when what happens if I decide I want to leave? I can't bear it anymore and I want to leave. What would the opposite be when you said, I'm quite comfortable. I've got all the time in the world. I could have a cup of tea. I could rest up a little bit. What sort of a change would happen there in the muscles? One speaks about muscle tone. And one is reminded of tone. with the word muscle tone. And each of us have a key note or a basic tone, basic note. And tone comes about through tension. If I don't want to be here and I want to go somewhere else. Now expressing this with our feet, we step with the left so that the right can make its own step. So I start with the left and then I take a step with my right. So I move from the heel into the toes. Left, right. And just this impulse out of our feet can inspire the whole body. And you can ask what happens in the movement of my whole body. When I go from left to right, what do I experience? The weight of the heels going towards the toes, passing through the balls of the feet. And when the arms float a little bit into lightness, that they're not just hanging down, but they're floating a little bit in lightness. That the whole of my left side from my collarbone and then to my right side, the collarbone. Then with the right arm, and see what is it like in the lower arm. The lower arm becomes light. And when the lower arm becomes lighter and lighter, at one point the upper arm joins in. The whole of the upper arm and the hand and the fingers join in. So this is a process, an inner happening from a basic tone, from our keynote, which brings everything into a sounding, into a resonance. Lower arm, upper arm, hand, fingers. And what is so special at this process, I go into the lower arm, then I go back into the upper arm. I'm very close to myself. Then I go into the lower arm, the hand, and then the fingers. And they become very light, as though they're not quite there. And Steiner describes this exercise in the 7th chapter of the eurythmy as visible singing, as visible music. And I use the collarbone as my starting point. So the feeling that I spread through my collarbone, pouring it into my arm, into the lower arm, into the upper arm, and the hand and the fingers. So become light, as though they're not quite there. And that is my basic note, my key note. I'm now expressing my key note. Let the arm slowly sink down. And now we go to the left and we lift the left arm up high and try facing the front. We have an experience in the toes And with a right foot, take a step backwards, slowly, taking your time. And then going from the toes to the heels, the right foot and the left foot. How does the arm feel with these steps going backwards? Right to left. Can you follow this impulse? It is impulsed from the feet, that the arm goes back a little bit, wants to float down, and that the feeling becomes stronger in the upper arm and in the lower arm, also joining in, back and forth, between in and out, back and forth, and then once again coming to the upper arm, and then to the hands and the fingers, to all the fingers, to the ring finger, to the middle finger, to the pointing finger, to the thumb. We do it once again, this movement coming towards me, one step back with the right, one step back with the left, and feeling this process. If I want to come to myself, I come in through my upper arm, my forearm, back to my upper arm, then my hand, and then my fingers. Once again, eurythmy therapy. In eurythmy therapy, we do this often, and we allow the movements to come into our being. And I feel, how does my upper arm feel? How does my lower arm feel? My hand and my fingers. And when you have brought this to completion, and to do it backwards, that you come to something firm, as though you are pressing against something firm. Sorry, he didn't say do the movement backwards. He said hold the hand to the back, facing backwards. So this movement brings us into our body, stepping backwards with the right foot, then with the left foot, upper arm, lower arm, upper arm, hand, fingers, and hand facing backwards as though you're pressing against something firm. And if I want to release, if I want to go out again, step forward with the left, go from the left to the right, stepping forwards with the left, and then onto the right, from the heels to the toes, and the right arm, so that the right arm wants to be lifted up on a pillow of air, and then the upper arm, and all the way through to the hand and the fingers become completely light, as though they're not at all there. And in this movement, moving forwards, you can pull the hand back a little bit, as though you're receiving something coming towards you. And that is the octave of the keynote, of the basic tone. So you can sit down now and feel what has been taking place inside of you. And we'll just have 1 or 2 moments of quiet and feeling into ourselves, feeling the echo. Is anything streaming? How does it reach you? Do I want my eyes closed? Do I want my eyes open? How does my mouth feel? How are my shoulders? How is my tummy? What about the breath? And so one could observe further, how does the movement that we're doing outwardly, how does this affect us? So now we're coming to question time. Or if you want to share something, you can write in the chat. I see some of you have already written in the chat. So this is a nice exercise to be able to arrive. How am I feeling? How am I feeling right now? And you can do this with both arms. I purposefully did it just with one arm. And also to take up the recommendations that Harold gave 2 weeks ago, working with a left and with a right, that Steiner refers to the crossover points. The left arm is connected to the right brain and the right arm is connected to the left brain. Thank you, Valentin. And we could recognize this. You asked, who was I? Who am I? And then relationships in different ways. And one of the participants felt how light her arm was when she worked from the collarbone, from the clavicle. trauma patients should take care, because I did this in therapy, and I had dissociations with such exercises. What could you say to this? So this is, of course, dependent on the individual person accompanying you, because the person who's accompanying you needs to see which exercise you need. And with these exercises, well, with this exercise, and I'm not exactly sure which exercise was referred to, and of course that is important. If I think of the body parts, touching the body parts, I can hardly imagine that that would create dissociation, because I am connecting myself with my body. And if I go into the gesture where I am losing, where I am letting go, then I can imagine that at that moment this might happen, that in a certain way I lose myself. And mostly the movement of coming inward, coming towards myself, is very good value for trauma patients, because that brings us to a feeling of wellness in our body, which one has often lost. And this connecting and this is, of course, a basic need to try and avoid dissociations. And when you were speaking about Judith's exercise of the starfish, that maybe I am so far out of myself during the trauma, and how can I then connect to myself? And this is a very difficult subject, and there's a lot of sensitivity needed around this. Somebody said BVS. I couldn't really connect with these exercises. So in the alphabet, whether it's Russian or German, B is the second letter of the alphabet. And when I relate something to myself, I am creating a B. The archetypal picture is the Madonna holding the baby, B. That I am embracing something. I'm putting my arms around something. And the E for air, V, the V or V is something that you're coming towards it. This sensitivity. I feel what is coming towards me when the hand goes into a particular direction. And S, in a lot of words we have In German, the word water has an S, flows has an S, smoothly, and surrounds everything. So S has a very flowing, movable quality, and it can be a help to enter into the living quality of one's body. And S in nature, I can find everything that is living and moving. How would you like to be touched? When I come to a leaf, or to a flower, or to a tree, whatever it is, to an animal, when I ask them these questions, how would you like to be touched? Then I can connect to the being, can connect more deeply with the inner being of this person, of this creature, of this being. And so these three sounds so that's what I would like to bring this time. There are many different people who are making comments. So we are touching something. We are using a word that is touch. And some people who are listening could be very, very difficult sort of word. And we must work very carefully with this word, touch. And especially those people who've had trauma through touch. And especially that area that was touched, where the negative parts, where the negative feelings were evoked. They are very sensitive issues. And perhaps you don't really mean physical touch. Yes, this is so. As I explained earlier, when I learned these sounds, to do them inwardly. I don't have to do them outwardly. I can live with these questions inwardly. How does this body part want to be touched? And I can work very carefully. So I have a very wise aspect in my body, and I can find a harmony here. And I can experience what I experience outside, I can find inside. So I can find this area that has been disharmonized. And Harold says that if you've had a traumatic experience, that you can then touch this area. So where in my body do I have harmony? Where can I start? And maybe it is just one's hand. Or maybe it is the step that I can work with first. How does it just work if I just do these steps? And there are very sensitivities, very large sensitivities here. We've done quite a lot of things in one session. but I could just look at the hand, how the hand movements. What happens when I move my hand? How does this sound? And how does it feel? And if I open my hand, or if I turn my hand inwards or outwards, so with the starfish exercise, the arms are very wide open, and then you bring them closer and closer. Where is the right place where my hands turn inwardly? I feel it exactly. And at which point do my hands want to turn outwards? And this moment, where do I feel wellness in me? Where do I feel harmony in me? And this is why I wanted to speak about this resonating. So if somebody is touched, so please be careful with yourself. Be careful that you might need help. Find the person who can help you. The human relationship is so important. And it's so important to have communication with someone, especially when you're being touched in an unpleasant way. Taking care. Take care of large movements. Listen, what does this do with me? And then another level, how do I react to what I've been doing? What happens in my body? And this listening into oneself. Maybe that is what you've given us as a gift today. That's what you've prepared. And next time, out of that, we can be working. We can work out of that. So we could look at the aspect of, I have lost myself.